Imagine walking into a store, excited to buy something small with the little money you have, only to be met with whispers, judgmental stares, and cruel laughter. Imagine standing there, feeling the sting of humiliation as people around you assume you're worthless just because of the way you look. Now, imagine their shock when they realize the person they just mocked is far more powerful than they could ever dream. Welcome to Stories of Hope, where we bring you real-life stories that inspire, shock, and move you. Today's story is one of justice, humility, and a lesson that many people learn the hard way. A poor girl walked into a luxury store, only to be humiliated by the employees in front of everyone. But little did they know, she was the daughter of a billionaire, the sole heir to the Billionaire empire. Stay with us as we uncover this incredible journey of pain, power, and poetic justice. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from viewers all around the world. Now, let's get into the story. It was a cold evening in New York City, the kind where the air bites at your skin and the streets are filled with people too busy with their own lives to notice the struggles of others. Among the crowd was a girl. Her clothes were simple, her shoes slightly worn out, and her face carried the exhaustion of someone who had seen too much too soon. Her name was Emma. She stepped into the grand entrance of Luxora, an exclusive boutique known for its designer brands and wealthy clientele. The moment she walked in, the air seemed to shift. The employees, dressed in sleek uniforms, exchanged glances, their expressions turning from professional to condescending in an instant. A woman behind the counter, her blonde hair pinned into a tight bun, smirked and leaned toward her colleague. "Lost, sweetheart?" she sneered, her voice laced with mockery. Emma hesitated, gripping the small amount of cash in her pocket. She had come to buy a gift, something meaningful, something special. It wasn't much, but to her, it meant everything. "I'd like to see the bracelets," she said softly, trying to ignore the growing number of eyes on her. The woman laughed under her breath. "Oh, honey, I don't think we have anything in your price range." Another employee, a tall man with a sharp suit and a sharper tongue, chuckled. "Maybe try the clearance bin at a thrift store." Laughter erupted among the staff. Customers turned to look, some smirking, others watching in silence. The humiliation burned in Emma's chest, but she refused to let them see her break. She had been through worse. "Please," she said, keeping her voice steady, "I just want to see the bracelets." The blonde woman rolled her eyes, but reached into the glass case, pulling out the cheapest bracelet they had. A simple silver chain, dull compared to the sparkling diamonds and gold surrounding it. "This one," she said, waving it carelessly. $30, can you handle that?" Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out the crumpled bills she had saved. But before she could hand them over, the tall man laughed again. "Seriously?" he scoffed. "We don't accept wrinkled bills. Maybe you should try a pawn shop." The other employees chuckled, one even pulling out her phone, as if ready to record the moment. Emma clenched her fists. Every fiber of her being wanted to shout, to fight back, to tell them who she really was. But she didn't. Not yet. Instead, she met the blonde woman's gaze and said, "I'll take it." The laughter died down slightly, replaced with curiosity. The woman sighed dramatically and rang up the bracelet. Emma handed over the money, and as the woman took it, she grimaced, rubbing her fingers together like the cash was somehow dirty. "Disgusting," she muttered. The moment the transaction was complete, Emma picked up the small bag, turned on her heel, and walked toward the door. But just as she reached it, a voice stopped her. "Wait," the tall man called out. "I think we should check if she stole anything." Emma froze. The room went silent. "Security," the blonde woman called out, smirking. A uniformed guard stepped forward, his face unreadable. "Ma'am, I'll need to check your bag." Emma's heart pounded. She looked around, at the employees, the customers, all of them watching like she was some kind of criminal. And that's when it happened. The boutique's glass doors swung open, and in walked a man in an expensive charcoal suit, his presence commanding instant attention. The employees straightened, the customers murmured. He wasn't just anyone, he was William Carter, the CEO of Billionaire Enterprises, and Emma's father. The air inside Luxora turned heavy, almost suffocating. The moment William Carter stepped through the doors, the employees' faces shifted from smug amusement to sheer panic. His presence wasn't just intimidating, it was a storm, rolling in with silent, undeniable power. The blonde woman, who had been smirking just seconds ago, stiffened. The tall man who had mocked Emma stepped back, his confident stance faltering. Even the security guard hesitated, his hand hovering near Emma's bag, but not daring to touch it. Emma stood still, gripping the small paper bag in her hand. She wasn't sure whether to feel relief or frustration. She had wanted to handle this on her own, to walk out with her dignity intact. But now everything was about to change. William's sharp eyes scanned the room before they landed on his daughter. A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. Concern, anger, disappointment. Then he turned his gaze to the employees, his expression hardening. "What is going on here?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that sent shivers down the spines of everyone in the room. The blonde woman swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Mr. Carter, we were just ensuring store security. This young woman..." She gestured toward Emma without even realizing her mistake. "Was acting suspiciously." Emma let out a quiet breath. There it was. They were still trying to play this off, still clinging to the assumption that she was nothing more than a poor girl who had no right to be here. William's jaw tightened. He took slow, deliberate steps forward until he stood in front of the counter, his fingers tapping against the glass display case. "Suspiciously?" he repeated. The tall man cleared his throat. Yes, sir. She came in alone, looking, well, let's just say she didn't seem like our usual clientele. We thought it was best to..." "Embarrass her?" William interrupted, his voice dangerously low. "Humiliate her? Make her feel like she was less than human?" Silence. The employees stood frozen, their mouths opening and closing like fish gasping for air. Emma watched, her heart pounding. She had seen her father in business meetings before, negotiating billion-dollar deals, shutting down corporate rivals with nothing more than his words. But she had never seen him like this. This wasn't business. This was personal. The blonde woman forced another smile. "Sir, we didn't mean any harm. We were just following standard procedure. Surely you understand?" William's hand slammed onto the glass counter, making everyone jump. "Do not," he said slowly. "Try to justify what you did." He turned his gaze toward Emma, his voice softer now. "Are you all right?" Emma hesitated. She could feel every eye in the room on her, waiting for her response. She could have said yes, could have let this moment pass without making it worse for them. But why should she? "No," she said, her voice steady but firm. "I'm not." A visible shudder ran through the employees. William turned back to the blonde woman. "You see, there's something you should have considered before you decided to treat her like she was beneath you." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "She's my daughter." A pin could have dropped in that moment and everyone would have heard it. The blonde woman's face drained of color. The tall man's mouth fell open. Even the security guard looked like he wished he could disappear. Emma watched as realization dawned in their eyes. The moment they understood that the girl they had mocked was the sole heir to the Billionaire empire. The same girl they had laughed at had more power in her hands than they could ever dream of. I had no idea, the blonde woman stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. No, you didn't, William said coldly. And that's the problem, because this isn't about who she is. It's about who you are. The employees shrank under his glare. Tell me, he continued, if she wasn't my daughter, would it have been acceptable to treat her this way? Would it have been funny then? No one dared to answer. William exhaled sharply, then turned to the store manager, who had been silent through it all. Fire them, he ordered. The blonde woman gasped. Wait, please, it was just a misunderstanding. No, William said firmly. It was a lesson, and you just learned it the hard way. Emma felt a strange mix of emotions: satisfaction, sadness, justice. She had never wanted to see people lose their jobs, but she also knew they had brought this on themselves. As the employees scrambled to plead their case, William turned to Emma. Come, he said gently. We're leaving. Emma nodded, but before she stepped away, she turned back one last time. She met the eyes of the blonde woman, who was now on the verge of tears. You judged me the moment I walked in, Emma said quietly. Maybe next time, you'll think twice before treating someone like they don't belong. With that, she walked out of Luxora, this time with her head held high. The drive back home was silent. Emma sat in the passenger seat of her father's sleek black car, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past. Her fingers gripped the small paper bag in her lap, the same bag she had been carrying when she walked into Luxora, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. She could still feel the weight of the employees' stares, their faces shifting from smug superiority to pure terror the moment they realized who she was. But the victory felt hollow. Her father finally spoke. Why didn't you tell them who you were? Emma turned to him, her expression unreadable. Would it have mattered? William glanced at her before returning his focus to the road. Of course it would have. The moment they heard your last name, they would have treated you differently. Exactly. Emma's voice was quiet but firm. That's the problem, Dad. If I had told them who I was, they would have suddenly become polite, respectful, maybe even apologetic, but not because they wanted to, because they had to. Her father didn't respond right away. Instead, he exhaled slowly, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. I didn't want to be treated well because of my last name, Emma continued. I just wanted to be treated like a person. The weight of her words hung in the air. William had built an empire. He had fought his way to the top, earning respect and power through years of relentless work. But Emma had always been different. She had never cared about the luxury, the wealth, or the status. She wanted something money couldn't buy: genuine kindness. They pulled up to their estate, a sprawling mansion surrounded by perfectly trimmed hedges and an iron gate that seemed to separate their world from the rest of society. As the car rolled to a stop, Emma sighed. I don't belong in either world, do I? She murmured. William's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? Emma turned to face him fully. I'm too rich to be seen as a normal girl, but too different to fit in with the rich crowd. People like those employees see me as some nobody because I don't flaunt our wealth, and the people in our circle think I'm weird because I don't act entitled like them. Her father studied her carefully. Emma, the world will always find a way to put you in a box. Whether you're rich, poor, kind, or ruthless, people will judge you. The question is, do you care? Emma thought about it. The truth was, she did care. She cared too much, and that was what made everything so difficult. I just wanted to enjoy a simple day, she admitted. I just wanted to walk into a store without being judged. William sighed, rubbing his temple. I understand. More than you think. Emma raised an eyebrow. You do? He let out a dry chuckle. Do you think I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth? I grew up in a tiny apartment with nothing but determination to my name. I worked my way up from nothing, and trust me, I know exactly what it feels like to be underestimated. Emma had heard bits and pieces of her father's past before, but this time, his words carried a different weight. So, what did you do? She asked. A small smirk played on William's lips. I proved them wrong. Emma sat with that for a moment. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe she didn't need to fight for people's approval. Maybe she just needed to let her actions speak louder than their assumptions. But then a thought crossed her mind. Dad, do you ever wonder if people respect you or just fear you? The question seemed to catch William off guard. He looked at her, really looked at her, before turning away. Respect and fear are often two sides of the same coin. Emma wasn't satisfied with that answer. She wanted to be respected, but more than that, she wanted to be understood. The morning sun spilled through the mansion's massive windows, casting golden light onto the marble floors. Emma sat at the breakfast table, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. She had barely touched her food. Her father had already left for the office, leaving her alone with her thoughts. But she wasn't in the mood to stay home. She grabbed her jacket and slipped out the door, ignoring the curious glances from the house staff. She didn't tell them where she was going. She wasn't even sure herself. She just walked, through the bustling streets, past high-end boutiques, through areas where people whispered about her last name but didn't dare approach her. She kept going until she reached a part of town she hadn't been in for a while. The place where real people lived. The place where life wasn't coated in luxury. She found herself standing in front of a small cafe. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, welcoming. A place where people laughed without worrying about status. She stepped inside, the scent of fresh coffee and pastries filling the air. The girl behind the counter greeted her with a smile. A real one. Not the forced, overly polite ones she usually got from people who recognized her last name. "What can I get you?" the girl asked cheerfully. Emma hesitated, then smiled back. "Just a coffee." "For here or to go?" Emma looked around. A couple of students sat in the corner, typing away on their laptops. An elderly man read a newspaper by the window. A little girl giggled as her mother fed her tiny bites of cake. For the first time in a long time, she felt normal. "For here," she said softly. She took her coffee and found a quiet corner. As she sat down, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Here, she wasn't the billionaire's daughter. She wasn't someone to be feared or envied. She was just Emma. And for now, that was enough. Emma sat in the quiet cafe, sipping her coffee, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. No one here knew her as the daughter of William Billionaire, the billionaire CEO. No one was whispering about her last name, calculating how they could use her connections to their advantage. Here she was just another person. She glanced around, taking in the simple joys of the place. A barista laughing with a regular customer. A young couple sharing a slice of cake, lost in their own little world. An elderly man flipping through a newspaper, his expression calm and content. For once, no one was pretending, but peace never lasted long in her world. The cafe door swung open, and a familiar voice sent a chill down her spine. Well, if it isn't the little beggar girl. Emma's grip on her coffee tightened. Slowly, she turned her head. Standing near the entrance, arms crossed, was Michelle, the same Luxora employee who had humiliated her the day before. Behind her stood two other employees from the store, their expressions laced with amusement and arrogance. Emma could see it in their eyes. They still thought she was nobody. She should have ignored them. She should have just sipped her coffee and let them walk away. But Michelle had already made her way toward Emma's table, her heels clicking against the wooden floor. "I was wondering what happened to you after you ran out of the store," Michelle said, her voice dripping with mock concern. "Did you find another place to beg for handouts?" Emma remained calm, refusing to give her the reaction she wanted. "Do you always go out of your way to harass people, or is today a special occasion?" The smirk on Michelle's face faltered for a second, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, don't act like you're some innocent victim. You walked into our store looking like a mess, expecting to be treated like royalty. People like you," she paused, letting her gaze sweep over Emma's simple hoodie and jeans, "don't belong in places like Luxora." Emma exhaled slowly. The old her, the one who wanted to fit in, to be liked, might have shrunk under Michelle's words, but after what happened yesterday, she was done playing nice. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You're right." Michelle blinked, thrown off by the lack of resistance. "Excuse me?" "You're right, I don't belong in Luxora," Emma continued, "because unlike you, I don't measure people's worth by the price tag on their clothes." A few customers had started watching the exchange, sensing the tension. The barista behind the counter looked uneasy, as if she was about to intervene. Michelle scoffed, flipping her hair. "That's rich, coming from someone who was probably digging through clearance bins." Emma let out a small chuckle. "That's funny, because last time I checked, you were the one working a minimum wage job in a store that my father owns." Silence. Michelle's face went pale. Her friends exchanged nervous glances, realizing something was very, very wrong. Emma could see the exact moment the puzzle pieces clicked into place, the recognition in Michelle's eyes, the way her mouth parted slightly as she struggled to form words. "You!" Michelle swallowed hard. "You're Emma Billionaire." Emma leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice just enough to make the moment feel even heavier. "Daughter of your CEO." Michelle's confidence shattered instantly. Emma could almost hear the gears turning in her head. How could she have been so stupid? How could she have insulted someone with that much power? Emma stood up, grabbing her coffee. She took one slow step toward Michelle, watching the woman shrink back slightly. "Yesterday, you judged me for how I looked. You treated me like I was beneath you." Emma tilted her head. "Tell me, Michelle, how does it feel to know that the nobody you humiliated could end your entire career with a single phone call?" Michelle's breath hitched. "But please, I didn't know." "That's the problem," Emma cut in. "You only respect people when you know they have power over you. But real respect, that's how you treat people when you think they're no one." The weight of her words seemed to crush Michelle's last bit of arrogance. Emma didn't need to say anything else. She simply walked past them, stepping out into the city air. She had won. But why didn't it feel like a victory? Later, that night, Emma sat in her father's office, staring at the city skyline through the massive glass windows. William was behind his desk, watching her carefully. "I heard about what happened today," he finally said. Emma sighed. "I didn't mean to cause a scene." Her father chuckled. "No, but you made a statement, and I think that girl will think twice before judging someone again." Emma frowned. "But that's just it, Dad. She's only sorry because she found out who I am. What about the next person she meets who doesn't have a powerful last name?" William leaned back in his chair, considering her words. "You can't change how people think overnight, but you can show them a better way." Emma turned to face him. "How?" He smiled. "By leading with kindness, even when they don't deserve it. By proving that strength isn't just about power, it's about character." Emma thought about that. She had spent so long wanting people to see her, to respect her. But maybe the real lesson wasn't about proving her worth. Maybe it was about showing others how to be better, and she knew exactly where to start. Emma stood in front of the Luxora store the next morning, watching as employees hurried inside. The same store where she had been humiliated, the same place where Michelle had made her feel like nothing. But today was different. Today she wasn't walking in as an outsider. She took a deep breath and stepped through the glass doors. The moment she entered, a hush fell over the employees who recognized her from yesterday. Some whispered to each other, eyes wide with fear. Others avoided looking at her altogether. And then there was Michelle. She stood frozen behind the counter, her hands gripping the edge like she was holding on for dear life. Emma walked up slowly, placing her hands on the polished surface. "Morning, Michelle." Michelle swallowed hard. Miss Billionaire, Emma raised a hand, cutting her off. "I don't want an apology." Michelle blinked in confusion. "I didn't come here to get revenge," Emma continued, her voice calm but firm. "I came here to give you something I didn't get yesterday, a second chance." The entire store fell into silence. Michelle's lips parted as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're not going to fire me?" Emma exhaled, shaking her head. "No." She glanced around the store, addressing everyone. "But I need all of you to understand something. You never know who you're talking to. You never know what someone has been through or what kind of battles they're fighting." The employees looked at each other, shifting uncomfortably. "I could have had you fired, Michelle," Emma admitted. "And honestly, you deserved it. But firing you wouldn't teach you anything. You'd just move on to another job and treat people the same way. Real change happens when we learn from our mistakes." Michelle's eyes filled with something Emma hadn't seen before. Shame. But more than that, understanding. I was wrong," Michelle whispered, her voice cracking. "I judged you without knowing anything about you." Emma gave a small nod. "And now you know better. That's what matters." A long silence stretched between them before Michelle slowly extended her hand. "I don't deserve it, but thank you." Emma hesitated for only a second before shaking her hand. "Just promise me one thing." Michelle nodded quickly. "Anything." Emma looked her straight in the eyes. "Be better." Michelle swallowed, then gave a small, determined nod. Emma turned and walked out, leaving behind a store full of people who would never forget this moment. That evening, Emma sat across from her father in their grand dining room. The meal in front of her was extravagant, but for the first time in a long while, she realized something. Money didn't buy respect. Titles didn't make a person valuable. It was character, kindness, the way people treated others when no one was watching. William Billionaire studied his daughter carefully, a knowing smile tugging at his lips. "You did something today, didn't you?" Emma smirked. "Maybe." He chuckled. "I have a feeling Luxora will be a little different from now on." Emma leaned back in her chair, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I hope so." Her father nodded. "What are you going to do next?" Emma thought about it for a moment, then smiled. "Help more people." Because the truth was, being a Billionaire wasn't her power, being kind was. If this story moved you, remember this. Respect isn't about status, it's about character. You never know who you're speaking to, so always choose kindness. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Stories of Hope for more inspiring real-life lessons. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.